Paige.
Hello, Lindsay.
Hello. All right, here we are, session 4 out of 5. I'm Lindsay Tjepkema. I am very happily stepping into having the ability to work with an EA for the first time ever, thanks to my friend Paige, who's CEO and co-founder of BASE. And that's what they do. They match leaders with EAs to make everyone's lives better, not just the EA, but everybody who works with them, as I am finding out. So we have talked about, Paige, we've talked about the perceived challenges and roadblocks, the reasons that a lot of people like me resist getting the help that we need and deserve. We've talked about how to find the right EA. We've talked about all the different things that you can delegate to an EA that I had no idea, that you just never really thought about. And then today we're going to talk about, okay, so you have found the right EA. How do you get things started to really make sure that you're getting off to the right start and that you're setting yourself, you're both yourself and your EA up for success. But before we do that, tell everybody about a little bit about BASE.
Yes, so BASE is a full service executive assistant staffing organization. We specialize in remote executive assistants, really high caliber folks. And we've really broken down the process of finding you the right EA, because there are a lot of really great EAs out there, but it's such a big partnership in your work that we really want to get that fit right. So that's what we really specialize in. We've been doing it for almost 11 years now. And we give you EAs that are tech backed, they're trained, they know what to do on day one, and they actually onboard you versus you having to onboard them, which is of course what we'll be talking about today.
Yes, and much appreciated, because I think that was, for me, that was one of my hesitations, was like, I don't know what I don't know. I don't know where to start. I am overwhelmed enough just myself. How am I supposed to bring someone else into this chaos that is my day to day and, tell them what to do? Because if I knew what to do, I would do it. So, but we'll get into all of that. So, but on that note, I know my life now, but especially when I was leading a company, you're leading a company, it's crazy. It's a tornado. Things are changing all the time. I've also worked at a big corporation where things maybe aren't changing as much, but there are a lot of moving parts, and there's like all these different systems and processes that it's like, I barely know what's going on, let alone bringing someone else in. So how do you make it, like, just starters, how do you make it less daunting for everyone to get started? Like, I know in the past, in some of these different conversations that we've had, you talk about starting small. What does that look like? How do you wade into those waters?
Yeah, so even just kind of touching on what you were saying, when you are doing all of those different things, that pain and price of context switching can be so damaging. And because we kind of are constantly playing catch up, it can feel so scary to say, now I also have to train somebody and tell them how to do all of these things, which is why we're such big proponents of starting small. And of all the things that we'll talk about today, we actually do a lot of it for our clients, but we'll imagine that you're on your own and you're just trying to get started with your brand new EA. And really the best thing to do, we can talk about it more linearly, but when you're starting small, do something little. Do something that you know will be a celebration. You can celebrate together. It builds trust both ways. It gives an opportunity for feedback. That could be cleaning up your calendar, preparing meeting agendas or travel agendas, researching flight options. Something really small and clearly defined can be a really great way to dip your toe in.
Okay. So, I mean, for me, again, I this is all kind of a building in public thing. I had never had an EA before. I had never worked with one. And you're right. She was able to kind of pull me through it and be like, okay, I have, so far we've met a few times, and every single time she shows up and she's like, I had an agenda for today, but let me know if there's anything in particular you want to cover. I'm like, nope, your agenda. That would be great. And so what does that, like, dedicated kickoff, or like literally first conversations, what does that look like?
Yeah, that kickoff, that kickoff is so important. It's the beginning of this relationship, and it's where you start to set expectations and get to know one another. It's a really important step of our onboarding process, is a kickoff call. And we've done probably thousands of kickoff calls at this point, and so we know the things that you need to be talking about. But this is the time where you show up and you are opening the door to you and who you are, your personality, the things you like, the things you don't like. This is where you might share a user manual about yourself, all the things that are easy to work with you, all the ways that might be a little bit more difficult to work with you, who the important people are in your life, how do you like to communicate, how do you like to receive feedback, how do you like to give feedback. Um, this is a really, really important time to just kind of set the stage. You're also giving access to tools, which a great EA will tell you how to do all of that and make sure that it gets done. And then you're also introducing them to the people in your world, um, both kind of introducing them in reality, but introducing them into who you are, who they are in your life, and why they matter, and how those pieces all fit together. And then, kind of a less talked about part of it is getting to know one another. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time in your relationship with your EA, you're going to be talking about yourself or the things kind of in your realm, but taking some time to get to know your EA. What do they care about? What's their setup? How long have they been doing this? How do they like to give and receive feedback is so important because it's
Yeah.
still a two-way relationship, even if one person is supporting the other.
Mm-hmm. So what can that look like? So again, a leader's life is typically crazy. It's a tornado in some way, shape, or form. I mean, what do you recommend as far as what does it look like to create a manual for yourself or to um, think through all the different logins and technologies and softwares and different people in your life? Do you have any like templates you recommend or like how do you even do that?
Yes, well, we've got all of the templates, anywhere from here's how to define what your ideal week would look like, here's what a user guide template could look like, here are some suggested goals and milestones that you want to work towards in your first 30, 60, 90 days. Here are the different topics that you want to talk about with one another to make sure that you're covering all of your bases. But yeah, it's really figuring out, just laying the foundation. If you're on your own, you don't have any templates, which of course we can post some links to some of our
Base can
templates,
help with
but
that. Yeah.
yeah. But let's say you're on your own, think about what do you want to feel and achieve in the first 30 to 60, 90 days, agree on that, and kind of work backwards of what are the priorities, why do you prioritize things, and break it up into bite-sized pieces. And a great EA can and should do all of that for you.
Yeah. And one thing that we've talked about several times in these conversations is, and that is so refreshing to me, is that this really is about you. This is about like yourself. All of the rest of your life is about other people. I mean, it's about, especially if you're a parent, if you're a part of a family, which most people are. I mean, you're taking care of other people when you're leading a business or you're leading a team. Obviously, you're taking care of that. You have your business's goals. You have your customers' needs. You have your team's um, like needs and things that that team needs. This is for you, and like you just said, thinking what your ideal week looks like, thinking about goals that you want to achieve, that's not necessarily like MQLs and lead generation and pipeline and revenue. Like that's, I want to feel better like Mondays are really hard for me, or like I want to feel like when I want to sign off at 5 o'clock on Friday and feel like I've accomplished something, or I need to hold more space in my schedule so that I can breathe and I can actually get things done. It's about, it's the one space, and you've talked a lot about this, it's the one space, often it's the one relationship where there's somebody really looking out for you professionally, of course, but also kind of personally. And so it's really
Mhm.
nice to be able to take that step back and think about
Yeah.
what do I want and need from this.
Yeah, you're so right. I think the EA's role is really to help you succeed and to see you win, and that's why they're there supporting you, and that's why this partnership is so important. So I love that you brought that up. But it can be anything from like, I want to make sure that I eat lunch every day, which is
Yeah.
a big challenge of mine, something that I absolutely forget. And when I'm in charge of my calendar, which has happened a handful of times in the years, I mess things up instantly because people are coming at me from all different directions. I'm not looking holistically at my calendar. I'm saying yes to things, or I'm offering times. I'm double booking myself. And so when you sit down and you talk with a human to say, here's when I work best, how I work best, then they can actively protect your time and make sure that you're you're ending the day not feeling overwhelmed. We review how many hours of meetings I have every week, the week prior, because we know based on kind of weeks of surveys of measuring, when I cross a certain threshold of meetings, that's when I report back at the end of the week, like, I'm spent, I'm done. And
Yeah.
so the EA gets into those nitty gritty things of how do you want to feel and where do you want to spend your time? It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
cool.
Okay. So take some time to actually think about what you want to get out of the relationship and work backwards. Um,
Mhm.
when you do, you talk about setting expectations too. So you have to communicate that and say like, hey, here's what I need to get out of this relationship. Here are my priorities. What does that like? I'm huge on setting shared expectations. What does that look like for you as you get started with an EA?
Yeah, it's you're going to feel like you're completely over communicating and you're talking about yourself too much and this is too much information. Who really cares that much? But you cannot overshare details and information and access. It's so important, especially when you're new in that relationship. And that includes giving feedback. Something might be 90% of the way there, the way you want it, but that 10%, maybe you're like, no, it's okay. I'm not going to say anything about it. But now's the time to do it before any of the habits are built in and before you're annoyed by it a couple
Yeah.
months in. Um, and so just share. That
Mm-hmm.
means regular check-ins when you're just getting started. I recommend touching base live face to face at least once a day. It can be for 5 minutes, just checking in. How are you doing? How are you feeling? What's going on? What's top of mind? Anything I should know about? And then from there, at least once a week, we see this breakdown all of the time because you get busy and your schedule
Mm-hmm.
gets overwhelmed, and it's really easy to be like, no, I'll just drop my check in with my EA. But it's so important. Another thing that's really important is making space for questions. Are
Mm-hmm.
you prompting your EA to say, like, what else do you need from me? How can I help you help me? I feel like Jerry Maguire, but uh, letting them kind of ask questions and not get things right and share feedback with you of what has been easy and what's been hard.
Mm-hmm.
It'll feel uncomfortable, but it's so critical.
Yeah. I think, and actually, one of the places that I'm at right now is got started with my incredible, wonderful, fabulous EA a couple of weeks ago. And we've gotten started, and I'm at the place right now where I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what else. What else do you need from me? I'm like, I don't know. So what do you do then? Where it's like you're getting started, and some of that low hanging fruit, like let me clean up your inbox. Let's look at your calendar. Again, I've shared openly like one of the big things that I'm so excited to have help with is that I'm launching a show in January, and she's helping me with that. And there's so much to be done there, but I feel like we're getting to a place where it's like, okay, this is really cool. I know I need so much more help, but I don't know what to ask for. What do you suggest doing then?
Yeah. Well, this is where a great EA really needs to step in and lead. I found that a lot of the leaders that we support, and I put myself in this bucket too, like I'm pretty knowledgeable clearly in my subject area and my sweet spot, and I know how to do that. And usually the people that I manage, especially before I was CEO, but I was managing kind of a department, those people all have kind of similar functions to me, and
Mm-hmm.
I know that space. But when you're managing somebody who has a completely different role from you and probably has very different strengths than you as well, it can be really, really hard to do that. And so that's why I believe so much in what our company does, because we can kind of fill that gap for you. We know what excellence looks like. We know what the resources that an EA needs to continue evolving and adapting.
Mm-hmm.
But all that to say, a great EA really needs to step in, and it's piecemeal at that time. It's not going to feel like, okay, here's the next step. It's that interaction of them pulling the information out of you. What's on your mind? What are your emotions like today? What is
Mm-hmm.
feeling the heaviest? What do you need to focus on today that we can schedule out the rest later in the week? And it builds bit by bit over time. Along the way, you're kind of also expanding that radius of trust and making
Mm-hmm.
sure that they're gaining more access and they're able to expand not only their tasks, but their realm of proactivity, which is a
Mm-hmm.
really, really big one. Once you have the trust and you have the access and they understand your priorities, a great EA is going to just start doing things without you asking. They're looking around the corner. They're going to know what question they need to ask you, and and then they're going to know what you're going to need to know after that too. They're thinking 3 steps ahead. So an EA really should be leading that process for
Yeah.
you.
Well, and I think it's interesting because literally everything you just said about expectations, over communicating, a user manual, or whatever that looks like for yourself, like sharing about yourself, sharing about what's happening in your life, sharing about the goals, sharing about what you need. Even if it, like, to me, I know it's kind of felt messy. I'm like, I'm building this business and I'm kind of doing these things and I don't really know yet. And you spend a lot of your day just kind of doing stuff, but the more you talk about it, you're right, the more they can start to see patterns, start to see the areas of your life that you probably feel a little bit frazzled, start to see the things that you're really excited about and say, how can I help you spend more, clear more space and hold space so you can spend more time on those things. And
Right.
if they're in your email, like this is something that you probably are like, yes, Lindsay, obviously, but it's a new idea to me. Being in my email and being in my calendar, I always thought like, oh, just being able to save me a little bit of time doing that. But the really cool thing is that by being in my email and being in my calendar, she sees things come up and is like, do you want to do that? Like, here's the thing that somebody's asking you about. Like, what do you think? Or I saw that you have a talk coming up, or you have a podcast interview coming up next week. How can I help you
Mhm.
prepare for that? Do you need to hold some space to rehearse? Have you written your outline for that interview? Like things that I just am so jumbled about because she can literally see what's coming on my calendar and what people are emailing me about. She can be that second brain helping me
Right.
get out ahead of things a little bit more.
Yeah, totally. I mean, think about when you are someone that you know comes to you with with a problem, or you need to troubleshoot something. It's always so much easier to kind of stand from the outside and give the input of, okay, here's some ideas and some recommendations of how we should break this apart. And if that fresh perspective can be so valuable, and that's what an EA can do for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they're also aligned with your priorities, I love this analogy of like we're all constantly juggling all the time, personal, professional. And in our personal world, we have glass balls and we have plastic balls that we're juggling. And the same thing is true in our professional world. And the trick is to know which ones are plastic and which ones are glass. And that's what the EA can help you do is like, those other things, those are plastic balls, whether they're personal or professional, and they can wait and we'll push them off. I'm telling that person, nope, you're not available to meet for 6 weeks or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it might be, so that you can focus on the glass balls. And like that thinking, I've seen it change people's lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, for sure. 100%. So, okay. So getting to that point you're saying is oversharing, over communicating, setting expectations, and just being really clear about, hey, this is who I am. This is who I want to be. This is who I am now. And I don't know. Like, I think being comfortable enough to say, I don't know. Like, I don't really know where I need your help on this area. I know that I need your help over here, but just
Mhm.
letting it be messy. Would you agree with that? Like, letting it be messy up front.
Definitely. Let it be messy. And also, this is why I think a kickoff is so important in setting those goals and milestones for 30, 60, 90 days. And you keep going beyond that. But if it is messy, it's life that you're dealing with, this relationship and this role. But if you can set a framework on top of that where you're pausing at a certain time, you've agreed when you're not in the weeds, you've set this point on the calendar in the future to say, we're going to look back and we're going to do a retro. We're going to see how did it go? What could have gone better? And so it's this kind of safe place for sharing bi-directional feedback that can help you then, in hindsight, organize the messy and reprioritize from there.
Mm-hmm. And what does that feedback look like? So this is a different kind of relationship. This isn't. It's different than employer employee. Manager, someone who's more senior, someone who's more junior. Like this is much more of a partnership. So how do you recommend that feedback to go? What does that look like?
Yeah, I don't think it's all that different from any other feedback that you give. I think a lot of people are maybe not as good at giving feedback as they think they are. Um, but it's like, here's what went well, and here's what could have gone better, could be going better. And sharing that both ways is so important. I like to do that. at least weekly with all the folks on the team that report to me of like, here's what went really, really well, and here's what could be going better. And it's set, it's agreed upon. We're both answering those questions. And so, again, it's creating this safe place for whatever might have come up in the prior X
Mm-hmm.
amount of time, to just talk about it from a place of curiosity versus defensiveness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that if you said it again, we're talking about how to get started with your EA. If you start there, then it's not a weird thing that 6 months into it you have to be like, "Can we do a feedback session?" Let's do
Oh, and
that.
by the way, the thing you do every day, I don't like it.
Yeah, that you've been doing for 6 months. Let's stop doing that. Yeah, it
Yes.
makes it a lot less
So
awkward. So,
our software, it's a digest builder for EAs. One of the many features that it does. And sometimes when we see the digests aren't, or we even hear they're not being read or they're not being reacted to, then we get into like, have you had a conversation about what you really want to see in your digest? Like, have you talked about what information is valuable and what you're kind of like, oh, I don't need to do that, or it feels like you don't even want to read. And once you
uh,
have that recalibration session, it's amazing. And they're just like usually very subtle little tweaks, but
mm-hmm.
you do that in a bunch of different ways.
I love it. Very cool. Okay. So let's also talk about you said something about proactivity. So the more trust there is, this makes sense. The more trust there is, the more communication there is, that lets your EA have the knowledge to even be able to be proactive, which I think is what every single leader who's working with anyone wants is resourcefulness, proactivity, accountability. And so what does it take to get to that level of proactivity?
It's the number one thing that people ask for when they come to us is, I just really need somebody proactive. I need somebody reading between the lines. And that's kind of the secret sauce of a great EA. That's what makes them so, so great. So we call it the non-ask, the thing that the EA sees as it could be an ask, and maybe you will ask it eventually, but they just take it and run with it. And it could be anything from surfacing this email that had been pushed down to the bottom of your inbox to preparing for helping you automatically prepare for a presentation that you have coming up, also including maybe some outfit recommendations or whatever it might be. It's seeing around those corners because they've got that eagle eye view of what matters and what's important, and they're not in the weeds with you. And so they can surface those things. But the number one breakdown of proactivity is context. It's
Hmm.
really, really hard as a leader to make sure that you're giving your EA all of the context that they need because it's work. You have to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that they know the information and they have access to the information wherever it might be. So if I'm in a meeting that my assistant is not in with me, how do I make sure that she gets the download of all of that
Yeah.
information? And so it's really important to find a process. And we've seen it a bunch of different ways: a voice memo after the meeting, AI generated notes that are being shared, a quick bullet point list, whatever it might be. The more that you can share context wise with your EA, the more ability they will have to see the whole field
Mm-hmm.
and take action.
Hmm. That's very cool. Again, yeah, it's I've been taking having using AI notes, and I think that's another one. It's like your inbox, your calendar, all of your meeting notes. Having somebody who's actually looking at them and that's what they have time reserved to do is to like go through your stuff and to summarize the things and to give you the points. That's not only helpful to you, it's also giving them, like you said, more of that context about what is happening so that they can see something a little bit more holistically and therefore help you see it more holistically and more strategically as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to plug software here that I have zero affiliation with, but I'm a huge fan of Front as an email app. I don't think we actually use it the way that we're supposed to. In fact, I know we don't. It's meant for maybe like CS teams or sales teams to collaborate on tickets and these, and it's got a bunch of integrations. But my favorite piece about it is that you can have sort of like chat conversations in each email thread. And
Mm-hmm.
so Debbie's in my inbox, but she also has a seat to front. And so I can actually assign her things in there, or I can just leave comments of like, really rough, here's how I would respond to this email.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's got that context. She can go in and draft it. I can tweak it if necessary. and click send, or something like there's this really obscure email that if she has no idea why it's there, she might archive it or think it's not important, but it's like something from the school that needs to be translated and looked
Right.
up or whatever it might be. And I can drop in little bits of context there. So I'm not adding emails, I'm not sending more emails, and I can tag her and assign her. So whatever
Hmm.
tool you use for your inbox, being able to give that kind of micro context as you go is so important.
Yeah. 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 I love that because I think, again, going back to some of the dispelling some of the myths and misconceptions that a lot of people have about an EA is that they're going to do the things for you, which sometimes is the case. But I mean, they're going to respond to emails for you. They're going to schedule meetings for you, which sometimes is the case, and that's what's needed. But other times, like you just said, it is a collaborative situation. It's, hey, this is important. Can you look up this, or can you find some time, or can you hear some of the talking points? Can you draft something? And it's kind of like that, volleying it back and forth. Like I need to go focus on this, or I'm going to go be in this meeting. Can you do X, Y, and Z before I get back? And it's that
Yeah.
it's like having two brains work on something
Yes.
simultaneously.
And it's getting so much easier too. EAs have so many more resources available to them. It used to be that they would just have to kind of manually learn your voice of how you write and how you'd respond to things. And that there is still definitely an element of that. But AI can also help you pretty effectively with that now of learning exactly how does Lindsay write an email.
Mm-hmm.
And so they can draft things. And then you might go in and tweak it. And then that's just further learning and knowledge for the EA. But they can
Mm-hmm.
go so fast. So imagine instead of sitting down and writing an email from scratch, you type in a couple of words about it of like, here's what I want it to be. And you could even do it in the draft. And then it's just done and it's written in your voice and you can send. I mean, the amount of times that people spend in their inbox, I think because it's so quick in and out, we don't
Yeah,
realize we spend hours in there every day
for sure.
unless we set up other systems.
Hours at your desk and in your car, like waiting for, in the pickup line for your kids, and, real quick before you get out of your car at the grocery store parking lot, and in the morning before, when you get back in the car after working out at the gym. I mean, like, there's so much time. Whereas you're right. Again, your EA doesn't necessarily need to do it for you. AI also doesn't need to do it for you, but it's so much easier and more efficient to be able to sit down and respond to something and say, even if it's like, no, this isn't at all what I want to say, I'm just going to rearrange things. That's faster than sitting down to a completely blank screen or not doing it at all, because sometimes you're like, oh, I don't have 15 minutes right now, I only have 3. And so then
Right.
that's how things for me get forgotten and shoved to the bottom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So, okay, what else as far as, so you're getting started with an EA, you want to get to that holy grail of productivity and proactiveness. What else do you recommend? I know you've talked about like kind of painting the full picture, looking at starting with the end in mind and working backwards. What else do you recommend for like, how do you get started so that you can get to that point faster?
I think once you're kind of started and you're getting rolling and you've got some quick wins, celebrate those wins for one thing. That is such a great way to build rapport and to just both of you feel really good in your
Yeah.
relationship. Say what's working. You've got your structured sessions to do that, but also just say it in passing, say
Mm-hmm.
it immediately. And from there, that sphere just continues to grow. Maybe in the beginning, you've talked about your longer term goals, but once you've laid the foundation, there's so many more layers that you can pile on. Usually takes about 1 year to really, really feel settled in the relationship. And that's not to say that you won't have immediate results and feel immediate relief. You will. But you kind of have to cycle through everything. You have to cycle through
Mm-hmm.
the holidays and you have to cycle through tax season or like whatever it might be. And once you do that once, then it's kind of off and running. But I think just always thinking of how do I include my EA? How can I continue to give feedback and receive feedback and think bigger and bigger and bigger? Because eventually that person can truly be your proxy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's an important one too, as we were talking about setting expectations. You just said something that I think is really important. It's not going to happen in a week. It's not even going to happen in 30 days. Give it a year, which, I mean, that might sound like a really long time, but you have a choice. You can either not give it a year and keep doing everything yourself, or you can give it a realistic timeline expectation of how long this is going to take to get to that, optimal
Right.
situation and partnership.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think that's really
And it's
important.
not active onboarding for a year. There's an
Right.
intense period up front where you're explaining, you're going to be having more back and forth dialogue about things, answering questions, troubleshooting, all of that. But it does take, it's a relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
this, it has to be a fit. And I think a lot of people kind of stay with something that they're like, it's okay. Yes, I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting some support and relief, but that fit maybe isn't there, or we haven't done the work to build the trust, give the context, set the goals and the milestones, and then it just feels like more work to change.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that too, but it's so, so, so important. That's why fit matters so much. Like, do the work up front, make sure the fit feels good, keep constantly evolving and adapting with one another. But maybe sometimes it's not a fit, and that's okay. And you need to,
Yeah.
like, it's worth the effort to make the
Yeah.
shift.
Yeah. And I think too, where I'm at is be audacious, and as far as what you want from your life, right? So here take the minute, especially here we are at the end of the year. Take a minute and actually think about what would it look like if you had an ideal week? What does your ideal day actually look like? Not within the parameters of how things are, but of how things could be. And what if you could hit your goals? What if you could get, your 10,000 steps a day? What if you could eat a healthy lunch every day? What if you could, feel really on top of your inbox? What if you could write handwritten thank you notes, for all of your coffee meetings? Like, what if? And actually push the limits, and don't just put it all on your EA, but like put that dream out there and share it with this person who's literally there cheering you on and who wants to help. Because if you and again, like, this is me speaking to myself as I'm going through this too. If I limit myself to just, yep, this person's going to help me with my email and make sure that I don't miss really important emails and that I don't double book myself, but I'm really going to kind of hold on to control of my calendar because I'm the only one who really understands what it is, that's all I'm going to get. Whereas if I put it out there, like, I'm building this new business, here are my goals for it, here's what I want my life to look like, here are the overlaps of the, personal and professional and family and work, and here's where I really need some help, then she can actually help me make it happen. And how cool would it be if and when it does?
Yes, exactly. I know. I love asking folks the question of, like, if you just had another hour every day to yourself, like, what could you accomplish in a week, in a month, in a year, in 3 years? And really, the EA is giving you much more than that. It's way more than an hour a day. And also, not only what you could accomplish, but your hourly rate, what your time is worth. And it's a really expensive hour to sit there
Yeah.
spending or checking your email. But if you could reposition that hour into something that's actually pushing you closer to, like, what could you achieve if these limitations were removed from you? Um, I love how you said be audacious, because that's exactly it.
Yeah. Especially founders. I mean, I know you serve executives at large corporations and you serve founders and you serve solopreneurs, but you and I have both been founders. You are one right now where there's a larger team and there's SaaS involved. Things are changing so fast and there's so much pressure. And to be able to have that kind of support and to be able to be audacious and to say, if I had just 1 hour a day, 1 hour a week, to be more of a visionary, to think about what I want to do with this opportunity of a business that I have in front of me, to get my team like really all rowing in the same direction, that's not that's far beyond how cool would it be if I didn't miss an email. that's that's so much bigger, and so yeah, I think, um, in summary, you've talked about, let me see if I get this all right. So, have a dedicated kickoff,
Mhm.
um, over communicate, share priorities and goals, and start small, and now, like we've also talked about, like be audacious with what that partnership could look like. Anything that I'm
Yeah.
missing?
Yeah. Proactivity, I think,
Yeah.
just making sure that there's space for that and that you're allowing it, because that's the game changer.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So we've talked about this in all the other conversations too. We haven't talked about it yet here, which is all right, let's say you haven't gotten started yet. You haven't found your wonderful partner of an EA. Maybe you're not working with base yet, but you should be. You have a way to help people get started that lets you kind of like test the waters first. Tell us about base resets.
Yes. So this was an idea that one of our base EAs had years ago, because everybody should have access to an EA. I think everybody in the whole world needs an EA.
I agree.
Yeah, I think we just all need more support. Imagine what the world would look like if we were all actually being supported. But let's say that for whatever reason those stars have not aligned right now, we have a product where whether it's your calendar or your inbox, and we've got one soon coming for your cloud, a base EA who's specially trained in whatever the tools that you're using. They are especially trained to helicopter in, clean things up, understand what's important, understand what's just noise, and then set up a system for you to maintain that moving forward. They automate it, they do all the wonderful things so that your inbox no longer has 60,000 emails in it, which is real. People
Yeah.
tell us that
Yeah.
all of the time. Um, and then they helicopter out. It can be a one time thing. We also are seeing folks do it for just kind of maintenance quarterly. We can come back in and do a refresh and tune things up because stuff happens. We get it. And it can be a really, really great way to try out what feeling supported in that way feels like, but without any sort of longer term commitment. So, what we're doing right now through the end of the year is a buy one, get one free. So, buy yourself an inbox reset or a calendar reset, and then give one to whomever it might be. We find often that spouses have different approaches to inboxes. I know that my husband has a very different approach than I
Mm-hmm.
do. And so it can be a great gift for a loved one. It could be a great gift for a coworker, a manager, one of your direct reports, whomever it might be, to give that gift of a quick reset before the end of the year.
Yeah. I mean, look around right now. Anybody who's having, I think for me, the people in my life that as you start to have the conversations around like, are you taking time off at the end of the year? What does that look like? The people who say, yeah, I just don't have time. I need to use those days to catch up. I love when my team's all out of the office and I can actually take those days to catch up. Ding, 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 ding. I feel like those are the people who it's like the clear flag of, hey, that would be someone who could really, really benefit from a reset and maybe could use their time off to like have lunch with you or like, wrap
Yeah.
the Christmas presents together instead of on your
Mm-hmm.
own while they're catching up on their inbox.
Right, exactly. And
Yeah,
then who knows what sort of brilliant ideas are going to pop into your mind when you've stepped away from your inbox and your calendar and all the
seriously.
logistics.
That's magic. Yeah, that is the most magical thing. Like don't use these last couple weeks of the year to like catch up on your inbox. Like use it to have that magical space where you're sipping your coffee or you're actually sitting with your feet up for a minute and letting your mind wander. That's where you solve the big business problems. That's where you come up with the really brilliant ideas. So take
Mhm.
advantage of the reset, get one for yourself and somebody else.
Yes. We'll
And
drop the
we're
link down
yeah,
below.
yeah, we'll share the link. And speaking of links, where can people find more about you and about Base?
So, in addition to the link that we'll share, basehq.com is where you can find everything. You can message me right here on LinkedIn. You can message Base, but we're here to help.
Wonderful. Well, you're already helping me, so thank you very much. And join us next week for our fifth and final session, where we're going to be talking about optimizing. So you found your right EA, you kicked off, you're doing all the things. How do you optimize that relationship for success and happiness and efficiency and effectiveness long term? So we'll see you next week at 10 a.m. Eastern. And thanks, Paige.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thanks, everyone.